Welcome to the Stress to Best podcast. I'm your host, Rebecca Wagner, a mindset coach and hypnotist. Each week, I'll bring you powerful tools, transformative resources, and inspiring conversations with guests who have turned their stress also into successes. Together, we'll dive deep into overcoming anxiety, building confidence, and creating a life of joy and fulfillment. Whether you're feeling stuck or you're ready for a change, then this podcast is for you. So let's get started on your journey from stressed to best. Welcome back to another episode of the Stress to Best podcast. I have with us another amazing guest today. I just love bringing on different guests and getting their different perspectives. This is my friend Gila, and she has an honors graduate of HMI College of Hypnotherapy. She is a recipient of the prestigious Director's Award, and she is certified in IEMT, sexual freedom, bunny talk, metaphors of movement, advanced handwriting, which I think is so cool, but we're going to save that for another day. Her passion is espousing all things hypnotic and helping people improve their relationship with themselves and life through greater understanding of the unconscious mind and the motivations that drive us. Whether she's working with clients or teaching fellow professionals, Gila brings warmth, wisdom, and a deep respect for healing intelligence of the human psyche. She has over a decade of experience and worked with over 1,600 people. She lives in California, and I am so grateful to have her. So please welcome my friend Gila. Welcome, Gila.
Thanks for having me.
So from that, tell a little bit of our listeners of who you are and how you got into this and all that fun stuff.
Oh, how I got into it. Well, I like to say I think I've been a human behaviorist my whole life. I've just been one of those people who's always wondering why. And I was the third child from my mother's first marriage, and apparently I took a while to talk. And they took me to the doctor, and the doctor said, she's fine. There's nothing wrong with her. When she's ready, she'll talk. And then when I started talking, my mother was like, will you just shut up? Because apparently all that came out of my mouth was why? I just wanted to know why. And, I was raised in rural East Texas with these counterculture flower children parents, very unusual for the time to, be more hippie-like. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I was curious why my family was so different than everybody else, why we ate things that were different, why they just behaved extremely odd compared to the general population. And I think that's when I really started just observing and wondering why. And, I've always spoken in metaphor. Everybody does, but when I communicate through metaphor and analogy as well. And then when I started doing my hypnosis training, I felt like, wow, I feel like I've been doing this my whole life. But I got into it because I took my daughter to a hypnotist when she was in 5th grade. She had emetophobia, which is the fear of vomiting. And
oh, wow.
Yeah. And I had known about hypnosis, but mainly just for like weight loss or smoking cessation or maybe past life regression.
Yeah.
And then when I took her to the hypnotist, I was like, I want to learn to do that. And so here I am.
And here we are. And it's been over a decade now or more.
Yeah. It's been about 12 years, almost 12 years.
And it's just amazing. The power of hypnosis and even the power of the word why.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much power in just that single word, and how even leading into it with your daughter with this, was it the fear of vomiting or fear of?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
It's the fear of vomiting. Yeah.
And she was able to clear that right away with one session pretty much?
For her, in one session, it was about 98% result.
Wow.
And then just some of the residual echo effects, faded over time. What I have found as a hypnotist is, asking the question why is the human behavior aspect.
Yeah.
But I've found that there's a lot of value in why not.
It's so true.
Because if someone says, why do you do that? Why are you that way? And if it's something that's really important to us, it's part of our values, our morals, our beliefs, our own personality, we can say, why not?
It's so true. And also sometimes the why not, it brings out a different value or belief that you didn't realize was hidden underneath it.
Exactly.
Which is
because so many times people come to us, the biggest conflict and struggle they're having very often is to be authentic.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that we shouldn't filter it sometimes because we don't want to be assholes, right? We want to be
Right.
kind people.
Yeah.
It's not like we're not, but there's things that are appropriate and things that are not appropriate. So we do want to filter. But when it comes to just letting your own freak flag fly, or just really owning what you want to believe, or how you want to dress, or how you want to express yourself, anyway, sexually, personally, professionally, that's where the why not piece comes in, because it's, that's everybody's coming because they're in that inner conflict with
Yeah.
either wanting and needing something, or not allowing, or being forced to,
Hmm.
and any variation that goes along that as well.
I've had many times of that inner conflict, but it's also like, let's say I'm professional, when I'm going to show up as the professional that I am, I'm going to dress very differently than I'm just going to be around my kids, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I
Sure.
think this is where women and women in general, they can get very stressed out because they don't know who to be or how to act in different situations.
Mm-hmm.
Do you
Well,
get that a lot?
I do. And I think, especially when I was younger, one of the benefits of being able to look over my shoulder, pushing 60, is to be able to say, yeah, I remember that. That sucked. That is not anything I would ever want to go back to. And it's not to say there's still not more for me to continue to evolve through by any means. But yeah, I think, we are trying to it's my understanding that we are forming our identity starting right around puberty all the way to the end of our 20s.
Hmm.
So this is when we are trying to figure out how we want to show up, how we want to dress, how we want to be. And one of the areas of this therapy that is really close to my heart is people's own body image, their own
Hmm.
perception of themselves. Are they seeing themselves clearly, or is there this internal deception going on? And so, yeah, I know what that's like. I worked in a very corporate and professional environment for many years. And I think the only way to rebel against my real hippie, fringe parents was to get I mean, and even in high school, I would, come to school sometimes dressed in ways that even my peers weren't, just kind of, I don't know how to describe it, but,
Like more
I think it was,
provocative or more professional when you
no,
chose?
more professional, more
Okay.
professional. That's not to say I don't have plenty of provocative clothing. It's just, if you think of what we wear at any stage, it really is just a reflection of our mood of the moment. If you were to look in my closet right now, you'd think she has multiple personality disorder. But yeah, when it comes to showing up professionally, I think a lot of people do put maybe pressure on themselves to be a certain way. But I say, look, as long as it feels comfortable to you,
Yeah.
and it does display a feeling of professionalism, let those two come together. That's ideally what it should be.
Right. Because my background is in massage therapy. And very often, as a massage therapist, people see them as wearing scrubs or yoga pants or whatever because you're moving around. Where I like to wear more business casual that I can still move in because I want to feel like I'm more professional than the average the
Yeah,
average one that's showing up in that space. So it's like even for
sure.
me it's very important to like what I'm wearing and how I show myself up. But there's been definitely times in my life where I have felt not comfortable in my own skin, and I'm sure there's so many people that can relate to this. Like I look in the mirror and I think, "Oh, that looks horrible." But then it's funny because then I'll look at a picture of myself that's taken the same day. I'm like, "Why can't I look like that version of me even though it's literally in the same day?" You know what I mean?
Well, I think it's mainly, it could be, is because at any given moment we're filtering through our mood,
Yeah.
our our perceptions, our hormones, so many our thoughts. And yeah, it's one of the things that we try to do as therapists is we want to get people to love themselves,
Yeah.
as we should. I mean, I think we forget, we come into this world, we're generally not born shaming and shitting on ourselves.
No.
That has to come from somewhere. But and so in trying to help people find, it's all about learning self-love, right? But I'm here to tell you that it can be a big leap to ask your clients to go from self-loathing to self-shame to uh, self-condemnation, criticism, to love yourself. Just love and embrace yourself.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, first of all, it's going to be unrealistic to ask somebody to make that jump, at least in my opinion. And in my practice, I go at my client's pace. So I usually frame it like this: we're just going to get you to a neutral place.
Yeah.
Let's work on getting neutral first, where at least you can go into a place of acceptance. It doesn't mean that you have to love where you are right now, but you can accept it enough to consider something different. And that seems to take the pressure off, you know,
Yeah.
because to ask somebody to go from everything that they've been through, the years, the decades of conditioning and priming to just to let go of that and love yourself, it's, I don't know. It's been my experience. If we just shift it a little bit each time, that's when we're likely to have the client success that we're looking for.
It's almost like it's too much to go from pain island to solution island if you're
Yeah.
thinking like in the water. Like you can't make that jump. Although you
Mm-hmm.
can do like small stepping stones or taking small boats or small aspects along the way, that's going to get you from point A to point B. But it's so hard. Like, do you know who Abraham Hicks is? You've heard of her or
Yeah.
them or
Oh,
whatever.
yeah.
You can't get from there from here. You can't get there from here. You
Yeah.
just can't get there from here. You have to go through the steps. You have to go through the points or the different check stations or whatever it is to get where you want to go. And I think so
Yeah.
many people want to go from point A to point B like really quick, and it's not possible in this setting.
Yeah. I mean, let's be honest, we've had one and done sessions where somebody comes in for an issue and one session is like my daughter. And it's
Yeah,
just like, whoa. But that is the exception. It's not the rule.
right.
In working with people who are looking for self-love, the first thing I ask is, well, what would that look like for you? And and that they'll sometimes they say, I don't know. Other times they'll say, well, it was like how I used to be.
Hmm.
But the other thing too to consider is I was working with someone just the other day, and we were working on this. Was a young man, and I said, when my kids were little, I would always say, look, Mama loves you, but I don't like what you're doing. I love you, but I don't like this behavior, to create a separation so that they didn't have to identify as the behavior. They could see it. I was very specific about using that language and keeping it separate. So when I
Yeah.
was working with this guy who wanted to make these changes, I said, the goal is we're not always going to like who we are. I don't always like who I am. I mean, once in a while things happen. I'm like, Gila, that was not your best self.
Yeah.
Or as my one sister would say, Gila, I can see because I'm a Capricorn, she'd say, I can see your horns coming out. Um, but because we're human, we're going to have those moments where
Yeah.
we're not being our best because maybe we're stressed. But the idea being is like we can still learn to love ourselves without liking whatever the weight is. We can still learn to love ourselves without liking the fact that maybe we still behave XYZ in these situations.
Yeah.
Maybe we're not as confident as we would want to be somewhere. But if you again you take away just the dichotomy of it has to be this or that, then it creates the image that's coming to mind to me now is not so much a bridge from here to here, but like stepping stones across the water.
Yes. That's how I see it too. Or like different taking different boats or jumping onto this buoy or
Exactly.
whatever it is. But yeah, it's for sure because like even with that what you're saying, very often we'll be like, "Oh, I'm so mad right now." But it's not you're not mad because you're not a mad person. It's I'm feeling mad right now because it separates
Mm-hmm.
the identity from the emotion, the feeling.
Yeah, for sure.
And
And I think when it comes to people's, perceptions of deceptions that they have about themselves, it's really about what society has told them, religion, culture, their
yeah.
family of origin. Uh, I my mother's from Mexico, and it's very class driven there. That's a culture that's very class driven. I mean, all cultures are to some degree, but Latin cultures can be very class driven. And so it's if your skin is really dark, that means that you must not be as educated because you have to work outside.
Oh,
Or if you, because I grew up in the 80s when it was just all about tan, 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 and so my grandmother would say, "Oh, mija, you're too brown. You don't need to be so brown." I'm like, "Are you kidding, Grandma? This is California. You can't be too brown."
make me as
but
brown as I can be.
I'm gonna slather up with that baby oil and flip every 15 minutes. But anyway, so yeah, and then my mom will say things sometimes, and I hear stuff come out of her mouth, and I'm like, what? Because the cultures in which we're born into, religion, society, they all tell us how we're supposed to be, and we're
Yes.
we're very much, if we fit into the model of one person's idea, we definitely don't fit into somebody else's. And so why do we allow other people to determine whether the size of our body, breasts, butt, nose, eyes, head, the tone of our voice should matter? to us, right? That we shouldn't let them create these illusions, these distortions of the mind. And so this is what I love to do in my work is say, who would you be without all that? It's kind of fun.
Yeah, I love that because we're taught from a very young age, and it's not even a physical teaching, it's commercials on the TV. It's playing
Mm-hmm.
with Barbie, who's like this hourglass figure. And like I seen this one meme, I guess it was, and it was like how Barbie has changed over the years. And like how
Mm-hmm.
before she was like this like glass figure, and now she's a bit more like, I
Yeah.
don't know, more,
Human.
yeah. And then you also had like, it was past my time, but they had like those Bratz dolls, and they were like
Yes.
um, very figuresque kind of thing. And then, of
Mhm.
course, even if we're not taught how to be like this, it's like this is what we should look like because this is what's portrayed as normal in our society.
Yeah. And
Or,
I'm here to say this affects men more and more. And it's always been around to some degree what an idea of a masculine physique is, right? From
mm,
like the 50s when the guys would like roll their cigarette packs in their sleeves. That was one idea of masculinity and toughness. And then there was also like, the masculine, the polished gentleman, what with the hat and the coat. But as things have evolved, one thing that I noticed that was so trippy to me because my son, they were both born in the late 90s. And so through the early aughts, you're just kind of seeing how young men start to perceive themselves. And it just tripped me out to no end when my son was in high school and the trend was for the guys to like shave all of their body hair.
mm,
Now my son was like the hairless wonder. He takes after his dad, platinum hair, hardly any on top of his head, hardly any hair on his body. But I was talking with some of these other moms and they're like, oh my God, my son wants me to, they're just shaving everything, all of their pubic hair, all of their chest hair. And I was just like, what? Who decided that that's what the thing should be? But it's just, and then of course, guys, I don't know if that's so much a thing now, but then
I
it's
don't
just like
know.
the six pack abs, guys, there's this pressure for them to look chiseled. So
Yeah,
I want to be really fair here because it's not just one, you know, gender or another.
right.
It's perception of what the moment of the time is that how we're supposed to look. And it's going to change. Right. But
Yeah.
I don't know. It's wild.
What's actually really wild is my younger son, he's only 9. But the one day I like go to like rub his arm and it's like super smooth and I'm like, what the heck? So I'm like, what did you do? Then touch his legs. I'm like, why are your legs so smooth? He's like, I don't know. I'm like, did you shave your arms and legs? He's like, no. I'm just like, oh my God. I'm like, where did you even get the razor from? Like, I know it was my razor that was in the bathroom. I'm just like, where is this coming from? So I don't know if it's something that's like becoming a trend again or like what. But yeah, my 9-year-old has been shaving his arms and legs, and I'm just like, I don't understand this.
Well, it could be a number of things. It could be he was curious. He sees mom shave, and so he's wondering what that's like. It could be
Right.
that. It could be that something his friends were talking about.
Could be.
I it could be. I mean, I do sexual freedom hypnosis as well, and there's people who are exploring. Whatever. I'm not saying that this is your son. I'm just saying when we see this, we have to consider all the possibilities. You
Yeah.
know, just they're just exploring and playing, and I think when we to be curious is the best way to go rather than make assumptions. But he's probably just wondering, hey, mama shaves. I wonder what that's like. I don't know.
I don't know, but I just thought it was so crazy. Like that even like how you were saying was happening in your son's generation, but it's also like happening again too. So it's like, yeah, it doesn't matter if you're male or female or whatever gender you are. There's different perceptions of in each different area. And I just think
Yeah.
it's so powerful how when you decide to take ownership of who you are and what your body looks like and how you not even what your body feel looks like, but how you feel about it. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's something for me that I've really come, we're all a work in progress. So I'm working on it to be like, okay, you know what? I love myself just the way I am because I'm grateful I actually have this body to be here on this earth right now. Because if it wasn't for my body, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah. And that segues to a nice point because when we're working with people who it does people I've had people say, well, if I like myself and accept myself and God, if I love myself, then I won't lose the weight. I'm like, really? Of course you can, because what I like to do is leverage the self-care, self-acceptance,
Hmm.
self-love. Use that as the impetus of why we're going to lose the weight. Because if we're losing the weight to look more attractive or be more attractive, or if to not feel bad about ourselves, that's that's kind of a negative reason. But if we're
Yeah.
like, I want to be kind to myself, I want this is an act of self-care to release the weight, then that's a very different energy behind it. And so when people come to me for weight release, I'm like, well, what's in how much, what are you looking to release? And they'll be like, well, I just want to get back to how I was when I was 20, and they're 45. And I'm like, well, is that realistic?
Yeah.
Would that be healthy? And so the idea being is I ask, what's a realistic healthy weight? And then we start from there. And then of course, when we're doing the hypnosis, we could say you'll release, 15 pounds or more. You can always leave it there, but the
Yeah.
idea is starting at a realistic number.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And I love that it's not about the weight. The weight becomes a symptom of what
Mm-hmm.
happens when you become more whole and connected to yourself. Because if it's
Yeah.
about the weight itself, and as you and I know, and maybe some listeners know, that what you focus on expands. So if you're constantly thinking about why you can't lose that weight, then you're literally
Mm-hmm.
telling yourself that don't lose this weight kind of thing.
Yeah. And my response is I say, has it worked for you? Has it worked for you to try to release the weight because you need to be thinner so your partner will like you more, so you feel like you fit into society more? Has that been successful for you in the past? Oh, well, yeah, well, I've lost weight before. Has it been sustainable? No. Well,
Yeah.
when you come at it from a different motivation, because that's what we are, right? As hypnotists, we're unconscious behaviorists. We're looking at the motivation of what drives people. And when you do things from a different motivation point, that's when I think things really, the change sticks.
Yeah. Yeah, because you're getting it to the root of that cause now, and you're not just
Mm-hmm.
changing the say the apple on the tree, you're going right down to the root and changing the entire root reason as
Mm-hmm.
to why you want that change, whether it be weight loss, whether it be the way you feel about yourself, even your hair color. And I
Yeah.
know like that's a big thing that's like coming up for I'm not there yet. Although people who like are going gray earlier and people want to embrace the gray, and then people are like, then you hear like the trolls on the internet and they're like, you look so much older when you're gray. I would dye your hair. No, no, no. And like that's just another thing. It's like, why? Why not? Why can't I be
Why
myself?
not? And baby, I call it silver. It's silver. And it sets off nice against my gold.
There we go. Silver and gold, right?
The other thing too to consider is that body image isn't just shaped by our shape. One of
No.
the areas that I love to work with people is if they have scarring, if the scarring comes from C-sections, if it comes from surgeries, if it comes from accidents or injuries. And so working with this, recently worked with someone who had a very I didn't notice it when they first came in, but second or third session, they're like, by the way, I'd like to work on this too. And they pointed out something on their body that was a scar. And when we talked about it, I was like, oh yeah, I can see that now. But they had so much focused on it that they thought that everybody saw that. And
Yeah, I
this was
can
a
imagine.
result of something that they experienced in childhood. So, working through, what do you want to call it? You can call it an embellishment. You can call it, anything you want. If you could rewrite the story on it.
Hmm.
And, if I've had both of my children by C-section, I can grow really big, fat, healthy babies. I just can't get them out. So, I'm only about 5'5", I was 108 pounds when I had both my children, and I just can't get them out. And so I
Right.
have this, and the second time that I had a C-section, there was a mild complication. So I had to be reopened about a week later, and then you have to heal from the inside out. So the scar is much more pronounced. And it's like, how do I want to feel about that?
Yeah.
To me, every time I look in the mirror, it's a smile. It's a smile because that's where my babies came from. And
Yeah.
it's just how do you want to feel? So yeah, I know someone who had a double mastectomy and she chose not to get reconstruction. So that was really a wonderful, wonderful series of sessions to help her learn to to get to know, to mourn a part of her that
Yeah.
was missing, no different than her pinky or her thumb or her eye. It was a part of her that she could mourn. The grieving process, let that go, and then how to be able to see herself beautifully again. and what the scarring meant to her was something so different than what she had ever considered it to be. So again, it's not just when we think of, weight release, it's those areas too.
I never even really thought of it in that perspective because the scars carry stories. So have you ever helped somebody say release, let's say the C-section scar, because it's a very pronounced one on people who have that for the most part, or they think it's very pronounced. Have you ever helped someone release the emotion that was connected to it where the scar has faded out like drastically?
Not so much where it's faded.
Okay.
I mean, the emotion will fade, but the scar
Yeah.
itself, are you saying you to work with them where the scar itself has faded?
Yeah, like where it starts to disappear because the emotion's been essentially removed from it. So then the body starts to heal, like use the healing process and start to like make it fade. Have you ever had like, or even like
I, you know,
an injury scar or something
yeah.
like that?
To be honest, no, I wouldn't know because those clients haven't followed up with me in that way.
Okay.
I work very clinically and I work very metaphysically and all points in between. And, the body is capable of some pretty crazy shit. I've seen it. I've
Yeah.
seen it. I've seen people who come in with Tourette's and they're ticking away and 10 minutes in the chair going through into hypnosis and they don't move for 45, 55 minutes.
Cool.
And they're aware because they're not in natural sleep. So they're aware of it. And they're like, that was weird. So I've seen really crazy stuff. I'm not going to claim that releasing an emotion can release scar tissue. I'm not saying that it can't.
Yeah.
Uh, because I think in an infinite universe, there are infinite possibilities. But I like to tell my clients, I'm going to underpromise and overdeliver. That's my goal.
Yes. Absolutely. Because
And
why
we can
not?
suggest, yeah, and we can suggest it. Of course we can suggest it, but we're also working with, I understand scar tissue from uh, my own experience because on one side of my C-section there is I don't know if it's I haven't gone to get the scan. We don't know if it's a small hernia or if it's just built up scar tissue. But that would
Okay.
be a fun one for me to work with to do a body scan and hypnosis and see, is it a hernia? Does it feel like one or is it scar tissue? And how I could use my own hypnotic process to clear that out. Because I
Mm.
have heard astounding case studies. There was a gentleman named A.L. Ward, and I met him at Hypnothoughts in 2016. That was the first year I ever went. And back then he was in his early 90s and he
Wow.
worked extensively in Los Angeles. He worked with law enforcement, but he worked with people and claimed to have witnessed and I hate to use the word facilitate. Let's just
Hmm.
say create the opportunity for self healing because
Okay.
all healing is self healing, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
I just split my forehead open last week on a kitchen counter, and every time I look in the mirror, I imagine it closed. Every time I'm looking and putting, ointment on it, I already sense and feel the cells stitching together. And so anyway, so he would facilitate for these people where bunions would be removed.
Mm.
And we already know with hypnosis, one of the great white papers that was written many years ago is the removal of warts through hypnosis. So I do believe that certain things are physiologically possible, but I've had a number of clients who have had cancer over the years and they come to me and they're like, is this something I can cure with hypnosis? And I said, no.
No.
I said, I can create a space for you to go into whatever type of self-healing journey you would like in conjunction with all the things that you're doing and see where it goes.
Yeah.
Um, but
Because we
yeah,
can't cure anything.
no, no.
No.
We can see that when I say that all healing is self-healing, I meant to continue on that vein and like, putting a band-aid on something is a suggestion, putting ointment on it. If we take a Tylenol for a headache, if we get surgery for a broken bone to get it reset, it's all self-healing.
Yeah,
So
yeah. And like even with my son, I was telling you before that he's my injury prone child. Although at night, I always do it right before they go to, but they're already sleeping, but I'll go in and I always give them suggestions before they go to bed. And it's like your cells are healing 10 times faster, 10 times stronger, 10
yeah,
times easier than ever before. You can imagine they're coming together and you can access that blueprint of perfect health and heal. And it's so cute because I know that they're accepting it. This is with more of my younger son, but if when he's really accepting it, even though it's like that sleep stage, he'll just start nodding his head
I love it.
while he's sleeping. And it's so awesome because there's so much more to this. And it's still self-healing in the sense that they're doing all the
Sure.
healing. They're just accepting the suggestions. And this is where
Yeah.
we can do this with ourselves, is like we can record ourselves on our phones and play
Mhm.
these self-healing or any kind of suggestions to ourselves because our minds like our favorite voice to hear is our own voice, right?
Yes.
And so if
Yeah.
you can have this on repeat in your head
Mhm.
to get where you want to go, then it makes such a big change
Yeah.
inside and externally too.
It does. And that takes me back to my story of when I had the C-section the second time and I had to be reopened. You're opened down to your uterus.
It's
So
it's
it
crazy.
was pretty wild. And she's like,
It's
well,
a
you need to
huge
change it.
surgery. People
It's
don't
yeah,
realize it's a huge surgery.
it is. And she's like, well, you're going to need to pack this every day. And I'm like, I can't bend over to do that. I can't get in there to see it. And like, well, your husband's going to have to change the dressing for you once a day. I'm like, yeah, my husband faints at the sight of blood. That's not happening. And so that's when they got me the release to go into the office. And when I had to go in once a day for a week, and then it tapered off from there. But every time I would, and this is before I became a hypnotist, but I was raised by these hippie parents who knew all about Emile Coué. They knew all about Jose Silva. They knew all about Edgar Casey. They knew all these things and they shared them with us as children. And so every time I would nurse my newborn, I would just lay there and again, imagine, sense, feel all the cells stitching together. I would see the incision close up. And it was probably like the third or fourth time I went into the doctor's office and the doctor was changing the dressing and she just stopped and looked at me and she said, I have never seen anyone heal this quickly from an incision like this. And I said, well, and I told her what I was doing. And she said, well, keep doing it. I have never seen an incision like this close up this fast.
That's
So
awesome.
it's a nice little, I mean, she didn't poo-poo the idea. She was just like, yeah, if it's working, keep it up.
Yeah. And that's what I love. It's like, you know what? If it's working for you, just keep going because
Yeah,
it's doing something. Whatever that something is, it's doing, which
that's
is
right.
which is
That's
so
right.
good. I love this.
Yeah.
I love this. I love conversations like this. It's like it's so eye-opening, and some people may not ever even thought to have conversations like this, or even um, have had ones like this. And it's
Yeah.
just so
And
great to know like how much we can heal from ourselves, where we can
mhm.
change perspective of how we see the world.
Yeah. And again, this before we got together, we kind of thought what we were going to talk about, this body image topic. And it really does play into it because, if we're having 60 to 70,000 thoughts per day, every
Hmm.
day, and the predominant number, somewhere around 80-85% are negative. And
Yeah.
so that's just the default. So we have to shift and change it at some point because the way we perceive ourselves as people will affect us professionally, personally, socially, sexually, even as a parent. And I remember being a woman and a parent and thinking, because I have a son and a daughter, it's like, I am never saying anything negative about my body in front of my daughter because that's not a model I want for her. So
Right.
she never heard me say anything. And then she gets to middle school, high school, and there's plenty of people telling her what's wrong with her. So if this is why I say it's going to be culture, it's going to be society, peers, whatever. But the area where it's also a specialty for me is with the sexual freedom is the way that our body image affects us sexually. And again, this goes across all genders and sexual identities.
Yeah.
It's about, do I feel comfortable in my body? And I don't know if you know that I do Kapusinian hypnosis, which is it's all about the emotional and physical sexuality and suggestibility. And there's these two
Okay.
dominant ones. That would be a great conversation for another time.
Yeah.
But about roughly 50% of the population is they feel and live and experience primarily through their body, and then the other is approximately that same number through their emotions in their heads. And so I happen to be what's called an emotional sexual female, and there's a bit of a disconnect between what I'm thinking and feeling up here and here. So it takes us a little bit longer to get into our bodies sexually. And
Okay.
so if there is not feeling good about who we are, that's gonna really inhibit erotic energy and erotic flow.
Because that's coming from the mindset first, right?
Sure. Sure. I mean,
Okay.
sex starts in the brain, in the mind. I like to
Yeah.
tell people the organ of your brain and your subconscious mind are like this pattern seeking little duo. And they're seeking to, we know to predict what's going to happen tomorrow based on what we're feeling today. And what we're
Yeah.
feeling today is usually an imprint that we picked up from long ago. And so, when I teach this, I usually tell my own story, which is being really thin, really small, getting teased for it. I had cystic acne all over my face. I could barely fill an A cup on a good day. And, didn't have blonde hair. And this was in the era of Pamela Anderson and Baywatch, especially living in California along the coast. I didn't fit that model.
Right.
And then my first, significant teenage relationship was off and on for 2 years. And when the boy broke up with me, he explicitly told me it was because my breasts were too small. And so that was an imprint that stayed with me for so many years. And then being an emotional sexual female, it just made it even harder to get into my body and to learn to relax. And so what women will often do is they will have a few drinks, maybe they'll smoke a little weed, and then I can just be less inhibited. I'm like, well, of course, because your critical thinking filter.
Yeah.
And so that's what allows us to let what we want to come forward. But this also affects men or people with penises because is it the right shape? Is it too thick? Is it too thin? Is it too long? Is it too short? They're still in their heads about it. I'm not saying all men, but it does happen. And so it really goes a long way when we start clearing these perceptions of deception about how we're going to show up sexually, because whether we are wanting to connect with ourselves and our own body for our own pleasure, or we want to share that pleasure with a partner, anything that's blocking our sense of confidence, self-esteem, the ability to show up authentically in our bodies, it's going to keep us from having the experience we want.
I can see that, because there's been times where I've had conversations with friends, and especially as women, somehow the conversations always end up about sex. I don't know why, but it's like, yeah, we'll be open with each other and tell different stories, and it's like there's times where, yeah, my friends will be like, they just couldn't get into it, or like whatever, and then they just stopped or whatever because they didn't want to, they just couldn't get into their bodies because they were too far into their heads. And
Mm-hmm.
this is a conversation like that we could dive deep in for a whole other one, but it's just like there's so much more to our sexual being than the physical body, like you were saying. And I just think that it makes
Yeah.
so much sense how it comes from the mind first. Like even going to like that chemical connection between one person, I was gonna say male and female, between one person and another,
Yeah.
it starts as a connection that's coming from the mindset, I guess, and then it kind of trickles down depending on how you express yourself, right?
Yeah, I would say absolutely. And you are in the demographic where you have the double whammy because you have children that
Yeah.
are young and that need a lot of attention and energy. And so at the end of the day, people are usually really tired.
Yeah.
And I can remember when my children, I was working professionally as in a corporate environment as a manager. I was working 40 hours a week. I had two children under the age of 5. I had a 1,600 square foot house. And back then I was just of this mindset where everything had to be like really nice. We had to keep control over everything and have it, whatever. And I can remember crawling into bed one night and everybody was finally tucked away. My husband had gotten to bed before me and I just lay there and sighed. I went, and I could feel my husband's hand comes and it starts creeping over the top of my breast. And I said in the dark, if one more person needs one more thing from me today, I'm going to lose my fucking shit. And his hand just slowly creeps away. And what I didn't realize back then, knowing what emotional and physical sexuality is his act of love was, let me help you feel good because of all that you have done. All you need is an orgasm and the whole world is going to be okay, right?
Yeah.
Because he's a physical sexual and there's a whole, theory behind that. And I was just at the point where I've already given all my physical energy that I have, because no one's ever 100% one or the other, to my job, to my kids, to my house. And so by the time I got to bed, there was nothing left from my man.
Nothing left.
And
Yeah.
and this is where we have to, I really, really, I built my practice. People want to know how I built my practice so quickly. It was by getting my body out there in networking groups. I would talk in front of any organization that would have me. And I would always bring up in some way intentionally the relationship piece, because that's what everybody is looking to it's either working for them or not.
Yeah.
And so, and if it is working for them, then they very often you can bring up reasons why it could even work differently or better,
Hmm.
i.e. sexually. And so the idea being, it's like you start talking about sex and relationships and people just come in the door. So
It's
that's how I built my practice really quickly.
interesting. Some tips that I could take, but yeah, it's very, very true that
Yeah,
when, especially in a room full of women, you start bringing up, okay, even the new Taylor Swift song, this new song, Wood. It's like this big thing because apparently it was supposed to be like knocking on wood, but next thing you know, it's about um, someone else's actual wood. And it's just so funny how this is the conversation that always gets brought up, yet people also kind of dance around it at the same time. So
sure. And I
it's
think there's a lot of shame. There's a lot of shame on anyone's part who's feeling like their relationship or their sexuality isn't being expressed optimally or the way they would like. There's a lot
Mhm.
of people feel pressure to people would always say, because my husband and I have been together since we were 17 and we've been together over 40 years now. And people say, oh my God, you and Steve, you guys are just like the ideal couple. I'm like, yeah, we have our stuff and we've worked through our stuff over the years. And thank God it's been really few issues and very far between. But we've had them. And so I think
Mhm.
sometimes when you get that moniker of like, oh, that's the couple that seems to be everything, that, oh,
Mhm.
there's, I think for some people, a pressure to maintain that illusion to other people.
Mhm.
And so there can be a lot of shame around the idea that couples aren't having sex very much or it's not very satisfying. And this goes on both parts because this theory of emotional and physical sexuality, it doesn't matter whether you're male or female, whether you're,
Anything in
any
between.
spectrum of sexual, yeah, it doesn't take your genitals into account. It takes about how you learned to relate to your body or
Yeah.
not. And so I will oftentimes get women in who have the much higher sex drive, much higher libido, and they're wondering what's wrong with them because their emotional sexual husbands don't, you know, initiate sex once or twice a week. And,
Right.
so it's like, well, little psychoeducation goes a long way.
Yeah. I think also with that, it's also a communication. Very
Mm-hmm.
often, there's n not the right communication even between the two people as to
Yeah.
what both people need. So they're
Mm-hmm.
assuming that this person wants this or doesn't want this. And
Yeah.
that plays a big role in it too, because if you don't actually verbally or physically say what you want, then nobody's a mind reader.
Yeah. Exactly. And Dr. Kappas would say the biggest mistake we can make in a relationship is assuming that the other person wants, needs, or is thinking and feeling the way we do,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to sexuality and the way the relationship goes, because we're all egoic beings. We're all going to filter through our own sense of self. And so we can assume, well, what's wrong with you that you don't want to XYZ? When the other person, that's just not their capacity. It's not their focus. And
Hmm.
we've labeled it to be wrong if somebody isn't an initiator, isn't the one to come forward all the time. And the truth is that may just not be their predominant style. And this is why opposites tend to attract.
Yeah.
You tend to have one person in the relationship who's a little bit more of the initiator, and the other that's a little bit more passive. And the one that's passive doesn't necessarily not want it. They're just not likely to be the initiators. And
Yeah.
then the initiators are like, well, if you loved me, you would. And if you really loved me, you would do this more. And it's like, well, to me, that's kind of like it's an insecurity on the part of that person. And it's a misunderstanding of the dynamic that probably is really going on within the relationship, because the person that they're talking to is probably thinking to themselves, what do you mean I don't love you? Of course I love you. And when you think about the four love languages, you hear it all the time, right? Acts of service versus acts of affection,
Yeah.
whatever. And but yeah, to me it's fascinating, and it does all loop back around into the body that we inhabit.
Yeah.
How we perceive our partner is perceiving us. And I get this a lot. Women will come in and they'll say, oh, I'm not feeling sexy. I feel like I'm too fat. I've had a couple of babies or whatever. I just if they're not feeling sensual and sexual about themselves, it's going to be hard to get into that mind state to give it to their partner. And one of the exercises I do is I have them, can you commit to having a conversation with your partner about this? And if they haven't, then they say, yes, I will. I say, ask your partner, to show you in, take a moment and without your clothes on or with your clothes on, whatever you feel comfortable, just ask them with their eyes or their hands, whatever they're most comfortable with and you're most comfortable with, to show you what their favorite part of you is, what
Mm.
they are focusing most on when they want to have sex with you.
I love
And and it surprises women. The men aren't looking at their bellies. The
no.
men are going for the boobs and they're going for the bits or they're
Yeah.
going for the butt or
Yeah.
they hold their face, and they look in their eyes and it's so the women are like, what, you mean you're not looking at the extra rolls here? And no, so
No, they don't care. That is
no.
actually a really good one because one of the things I was asked is like, what is something that the listener can go do to change something? And I think that's the perfect thing is to just ask your partner to stand there and ask your partner what's their favorite thing about you. And I think that's so powerful. And it could be hard for some people even to ask that question.
Absolutely. And it's even harder. This is what I coach people on. Whatever they tell you, do not get defensive. Do not negate.
Mm. Yeah.
Do not question, because that means you are not respecting your partner's state. You're not respecting them. So, the idea of is being that you can't negate what they say and then you can't
No.
get defensive. And to be honest, we don't want to objectify, especially women. We don't want to objectify in the way that is disrespectful, that
Hmm.
is dehumanizing, that is minimizing. That's a hard stop. That's a hard
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
When it comes to intimate partner consensual relationships, a little bit of objectifying needs to take place.
Hmm.
And again, this could be a whole different conversation, but
Hmm.
this is where if the partner says, if let's just say it's a woman and she goes to her partner and we do the exercise and she's like, yeah, he went right for my tits. And then she's like, he didn't even bother to look in my eyes. It's like a little bit of objectification, when it's consensual and respectful, to be honest, what do you objectify about him? Well,
Yeah.
I love his big biceps. I love that he has really strong arms. I'm like, and isn't that a form of objectification? It's just somehow different than this. So a lot of psychoeducation can go along. And some people will say, well, my husband looked right in my eyes, or I noticed their eyes first. So again, we have to invite our clients to not judge, don't analyze, just be open. And then ask maybe why.
Yeah. Yeah.
Back to that, well, and why is that so? You know?
It just made me think I have a friend and when her and her husband first got together, he pretty it took some time, although he had scanned her entire body and figured out what areas she liked to be touched, what areas she didn't like to be touched, what ones were maybe trigger ones, or was like completely stay away. And obviously, it took some time, but got through the whole body essentially. And now they've got a really good sex life in that sense because they both know what are the yes spots, what are the no spots, what are the completely stay away spots. And I just thought it was so interesting and fascinating that they did that because
Yeah,
they know each other literally every single inch, what's good, what's bad, what's not, what to stay
yeah.
away
It's
from. And I was like,
beautiful.
that's powerful. Like that's powerful in itself. And I
It
don't know,
is.
that's the only person I know that's done that. I'm like, I think that's just a really powerful thing to do and create that better bond between the two people too.
I think that's absolutely beautiful. And what is more of an intimate act? That is far more intimate than intercourse.
Yeah.
When you
Oh,
think about it, that is far more of a deeply intimate act to lay there and allow a person to explore your body in a consensual way with what's okay and what's not, what's the yes, the no, the maybe, the absolutely, hands off. And so
yeah.
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was so powerful when she told me that. I'm just like, wow, that's amazing. And then, of course, to remember those spots. Sometimes they may have to go over a couple times and just make sure that this is not the right spot or this is the right spot. But I
And
definitely
over
think
time, sometimes those spots change.
this is true too. This is true too, because once you go through, say, like some kind of healing journey or healing
Yeah.
process, something that was like a trigger spot maybe no longer is because the trauma, trigger, emotion, whatever it is, has been removed from it and
Yeah.
whatever else, Oh, I just love this.
I love that we're bringing this probably close to a close on that
Yeah.
story that you just shared, because if we're talking about our own perception of our body, how beautiful that this couple was able to do that for
Hmm.
her to see her body through his touch.
Yeah.
I should say for her to experience her body through his touch. That's beautiful.
Yeah, I thought it was beautiful too, and it's so true because then it gives her a different perspective of her body and to show that yes, you can love yourself. If
Mm-hmm.
this person can love every bit and piece of you, you can love every bit and piece of you as well.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. And I think, like I said, for the listener to go have that conversation with their spouse to be like, what's your favorite part? What's not what's not, but just what is your favorite part and why?
Mm-hmm.
It's so powerful to be able to just have somewhere to start that communication lineup.
Sure. And it doesn't even have to be the word favorite. It could be when you think about connecting with me intimately, where do you want to go first on my body? Because sometimes favorite can carry its own little connotation. But there's lots of different ways to form it linguistically. Honey, when you think about being sexual, and us having our sexy time, whatever, in your mind, like, could you show me like where do I inspire that feeling in you?
Hmm.
How where and within or on me does your erotic energy pilot light, get brighter? There's lots of different ways to metaphorically say it.
Yeah.
Um, if I probably should have framed it better from the outset instead of saying favorite, but there's lots of gentler, more broad metaphorical ways to describe it. But
Or
yeah,
what's your most fascinating part?
there you go. There you
Because that would
go.
create the curiosity. Like, why is this freckle on this arm so fascinating to you, or whatever
Yeah,
it
it could
is?
absolutely be. It could absolutely be.
Oh, I love this. Well, thank you, Gila, for being here. One of the things I always like to ask my guests is if you had a really stressful day, stressful week, stressful month, how would you describe your perfect reset day in only 3 words?
My perfect reset day in only 3 words. Ah, bath, book, and quiet.
I love it. I love it. Bath, book, and quiet. That
Yeah.
sounds like a perfect reset day to me too.
Yeah.
We could add one more word, candle.
Yeah. Little splash of wine. Let's go for 4. Yeah. Or that would be
We could
5,
we
right?
could keep going. Bubbles.
A massage. Ooh, yeah. No, but in 3 words, it would be those. Yeah, because that's how that would be a nice quiet way to reset. And if anybody is interested in the ENP sexuality, they can go to my YouTube channel, which is the G Spot Hypnotherapy on YouTube.
Love it.
And I did a whole series on EMP sexuality, and I will be doing an actual, a more in depth series as far as going deeper into the different aspects of it. It's just for YouTube. You got to keep I was at the time keeping the clips a little shorter. But yeah, you can find all sorts of information there.
On the YouTube, the G Spot, that'll definitely be in the show notes. And then what about for socials? What's the best space for people to find you on socials?
Hypno G, hypno_G on TikTok and Instagram.
Love it. We will definitely put that in the show notes. I would definitely recommend listening to Gila's podcast because she is, as you've heard, so fascinating, so inspiring, and so amazing. And she has lots of knowledge to share. And if it's going to help you change your mindset in some way, shape, or form, how you look at yourself, how you feel about yourself, or how you want to portray yourself in the world, then definitely reach out to her or follow her and listen to her stuff because she's just as powerful too. Thank you, Gila, so much for being here. It was such a great conversation. And we'll
Likewise,
definitely
I
have to have
really,
another one and go even deeper on the sexual stuff because I think it's so powerful.
me too. It's one of my favorite topics.
I believe
All
it. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you for
right.
listening for the next episode of Stress the Best podcast, and I will see you on the next episode. Thank you for spending your time with me on the Stress to Best podcast. I hope today's episode gave you something valuable, maybe a new insight, a helpful tip, or just a reminder that you're not alone on this journey. If you found something that resonated, take it with you, use it, and watch how your day transforms. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love for you to leave a review or share it with someone who could use a little extra calm and joy in their life. Together, we're moving forward from stress to best, one step at a time. And be sure to subscribe so you never miss another episode. I'll see you next time.